So, like, what is the importance of these discoveries? The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? Like, why is it important? And maybe you can put that into context. Maybe, yeah.
Right. So, one of the things that I like to say about the Dead Sea Scrolls is that almost everybody has heard of them, but most people have no idea what they are. And I think that the reason why people have heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls and why they've kind of gotten so much publicity is because there's this kind of general perception that they have something to do with Jesus and early Christianity. And that's not really true. I mean, they do date to the time of Jesus, and the community that lived at Qumran was there in the time of Jesus, but they don't have anything to do directly with Jesus or the New Testament. So, first of all, rule that out as what the but there are other things that are significant about the Dead Sea Scrolls. So one is that we have among the Dead Sea Scrolls the earliest copies of the Hebrew Bible that have ever been found. So the earliest copies of the books of the Old Testament. And this is important because until the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, the earliest copies of the Hebrew Bible that we had dated to the ninth and 10th centuries AD, which basically means like the Middle Ages. The scrolls date to mostly the second and first centuries BC, some of them a little earlier, some of them a little later. And that means that they take us back much closer to the time when the Hebrew Bible was first edited and written down. And we can then see what changes, if any, have been made in the text of the Hebrew Bible over the course of centuries, right? So they're very important for understanding the sort of history and text of the Hebrew Bible. But aside from that, they also shed light on Judaism in the time of Jesus. So anybody who's interested in Jesus and the Dead Sea Scrolls, what's really important about them is that they help flesh out our understanding of Jews and Judaism in the time of Jesus so that you can sort of situate Jesus better within that Jewish context. Because basically, what you have in this period, so again, we're talking now, let's say, first century BC, first century AD, what's called in Jewish history the late Second Temple period. What you have is Jewish society divided into a lot of different groups, and they're all Jewish. They all believe that as a Jew, you should observe biblical Jewish law, but they disagree on the interpretation and practice of specific points of law. And that's where Jesus comes in. So Jesus, like everybody else, right? He's a Jew, he observes biblical Jewish law, but he has some of his own interpretations of specific points, and that's what you see him presented as debating on with his opponents, mostly the Pharisees in the gospel accounts. And so what when we look at the scrolls, what we get an understanding of is sort of this broader context of Jesus and where he has specific points of similarity and difference with some of these other groups, and especially with the group that lived at Qumran, which had its own specific outlook. So if you compare what we have at Qumran, that group, who are, I think, are the Essenes, and many scholars think they're Essenes, if you compare their beliefs and practices with what we read about in the gospel accounts, there are some striking similarities with what you hear about in the gospels with what Jesus is preaching, but there are also some very important differences. So that's sort of, for a lot of people, that would be really what an important aspect of the Dead Sea Scrolls would be.